All right. So yeah, a quick reminder, we're currently also doing the live streaming on YouTube. And afterwards, we will also upload the recording to our YouTube channel for students who couldn't join today. Yeah, but also feel free to follow us there and come back to the video when you want to look for some tips again later on. So yeah, welcome to this solution challenge event organized by Gdse Munich in collaboration with other Gdse across Europe, like Gdse from ETH Zurich. And so since this is a joint event with a couple of GDSCs, let's get to know each other a little bit and start with a warm-up pool. So please go to this menti.com and use this code displayed here. Or if you have smartphone on your side, you could also scan this QR code. And I will wait for some time. And I think I also have the direct link for you. Yeah, so the first question is, in which university are you starting? I think we have a diverse, coming from diverse university or countries. Let me send. Okay, I already see. TUM, of course, yeah. Stuttgart, welcome. Duale Hochschule? Which city? Darmstadt. Wow. LMU, welcome. Really nice. Great, then let's come to the next one. So next question, we would be really interesting to hear what's your goal for the Solution Challenge 2022? Okay, I already see some response. Have fun, of course. And maybe you also want to learn new technologies. Yeah. And for the people who joining late, we are currently doing a poll, so you can see the code on the top of the screen. Diversity, yeah. So you're able to meet students from other universities as well. And yeah. Cool. Nice to hear. So I believe you're gonna to take a lot away from today's event, as we have really some awesome speakers who are able to give you some all kinds of tips for this solution challenge. Okay. So let's go back to the agenda today. So first of all, we will have Jeff, the lead of Gdse at ETH Zurich, and he will give a brief intro about the solution challenge this year. And then we will do a panel discussion with two solution challenge mentors, Leona and Miri. And afterwards, you will meet the top 10 finalist team from last year, the SimplAR team from TU Munich. So really glad to have you all here. And at last, we will have enough time for Q&A, networking, etc. And if you have questions in between, feel free to write them directly in the chat. We will keep an eye on your questions. So yeah, without further ado, hand over to you, Jeff.
Great, thanks, Leanda. Hi, everyone. Let's start with a brief introduction about Solution Challenge. What is a Solution Challenge? Let me quickly remind you, an annual contest that invites students from Gdse communities to develop solutions for one or more of the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals using Google technologies. Why is that? We all know that Google Developer Student Clubs, for short Gdse, are about bridging the gap between theory and practice. And what is the best way to do so? Is inviting all students from Gdse to build some applications projects with some purpose. But what could that be? All students like to have an impact on their local or global communities. So this is captured by the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that are very broad, impactful, and touch on all the topics that people can think of that are about good, such as people, planet, peace, prosperity, and even partnerships. I will not list them all, but I encourage you, if you want to develop some ideas about the solution challenge, to look at them later. Please, next slide. Timeline. So this competition is organized by Google each year. It starts in January. The kickoff was on January 11th. And from there, students learn and build their projects until March 31st, that is the submission date. You can start so building your project already. And if you haven't started yet, there are still a couple of weeks that you can make use of to build something cool. And this is already the third year that they do the solution challenge on United Sustainable Development Goals, meaning maybe also in the next year if you don't manage to build the solutions by this timeline. But then all the people that submitted the project by March 31st will be judged, and the best 50 go on to the next phase, in which they will iterate one more time on their project to build their final solution. Then the submission for this will happen at the end of May. There will be a second phase of judgment of the solutions by mentors and people from Google. The top 10 teams will be announced around mid-June, and all of them will do a live demo on the end of August. In that demo, also the top 3 winners will be announced. And what do the winners win? Let's move on to the prizes. All the top 50 teams received customized mentorships from Google's. We have some mentors today with us, a branded t-shirt and a certificate. And maybe the mentorship is one of the most useful things, because at that point we will see how, what impact mentors can help achieve working on the project with you. Top 10 finalists receive additional mentorship swag box opportunity to showcase their solution in a live demo, as I said. And then these 10 finalists receive also 1,000 each. Top 3 winners will receive even more, with more swags up to, and then also $3,000 USD dollars, and a feature on the Google developers blog. Really awesome prizes, and they increased them quite a lot from last year. Let's move on. How people, projects actually get selected and win these prizes. There are 2 criteria: impact, that is 60 points worth, and technology, a bit less, 40 points. Impact is somehow more important for some reasons. The first thing is to establish a United Nations Sustainable Development Goal that your project is tackling. But perhaps you can also think about what you would like to develop and then look for the closest Sustainable Development Goal. And then the points, the criteria, or the voices that you can see in the impact very much correlate with the software development cycles. So you will see that it's also based, if you tested your solution with real users and got feedback from them and iterate one more based on that feedback, which makes what the software development cycle is. And then technology, what technology did you use, up to what point you implemented what you wanted to achieve, and so on. I invite you to look at them more calmly and see how to make the most out of your time to work on what actually matters for your project to be like evaluated as better as possible. And who can participate? Students from all Gdse universities, but not only that. If at your university there is no Gdse, you can join the closest one, and the only constraint is that at least one student from that team has to be part of a Gdse that like at a university in which there is a Gdse. But there are so many, like more than 1,500 in the world. So it's an easy constraint to satisfy. Then let's move on, or I think that this is all about solution challenge. If there are any questions, we are happy to take them. Otherwise, I hand over to our mentors.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jeff. So I think I don't see any questions in the chat currently. But if you do have any, then feel free to write there. And as Nexus, we are honored to have two solution challenge mentors with us, Leona and Miri. And we are going to do a panel discussion about how to start the solution challenge project and give you some tips. But first, let them give a brief introduction of themselves. So Leona, do you want to go first?
Yes, hi everyone. Yes, so I'm Leona. I work at Google. I've been there for 12 years, managing product launches. Also, I'm part of an international strategy and operations team. And I'm a coach and mentor for my favorite coaches are startups from like the ones we had for the Developer Students Club program. And what else? Yeah, I'm also a big fan of design thinking methodologies, and I'm using that a lot in my work. And I think this is why I'm here today, to share a bit of those tips and techniques with you, and hopefully that will be helpful for finding your own solution and contribution to the challenge. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for joining, and I'm really looking forward for the tips from you. And then we also have Miri.
Hi, super happy to be here today. Yeah, so my day-to-day job is a data engineer at a gaming company. I'm also a master's student degree for a student for game development, and I'm the lead of the Gdse mentorship program, and also a Women Developer Academy mentor. Basically, I really love helping students with their technical projects and also help them getting into the industry and finding their first steps and their first internships and stuff like that.
Nice, glad to have you. So yeah, then let's jump right into the discussion. So we will cover three main phases of the solution challenge: the brainstorming stage, prototyping stage, and the finalizing stage. So let's start first with the brainstorming stage. I think the very first question students might have when they're consider participate in solution challenge is how to find the relevant problem to solve. You know, there's 70 SDGs, and how should we select from them? So Leona, do you want to take this one?
Yes, absolutely. So quick question for the group here. Maybe we can even use Menti for that. So what's your experience with using design thinking, or is that something maybe on a scale from 1 to 10? If 1 is, yes, I've heard about it, not exactly sure what it is, but I know how to spell it. And 10 is, yes, I'm a pro and I have used this a lot. Is that possible to get a bit of a feel where the group is? Or you can just use the chat and put it into the chat, your number.
Yeah, I think chat is easiest.
Yeah, chat. there's some limits on.
So,
Wow.
so that's pretty mixed. There we have a couple of very experienced design thinking users, but also lots of folks among you who have just heard about it and have not really used it. So this challenge, I think, is a great opportunity to apply and learn about design thinking. And so the big principle in design thinking is iteration. So really reflection in action. So for back to the question on how do I find relevant problem to solve, it's really a matter of looking around you and picking maybe probably from the starting broad with the 17 goals we have on the slide here, and picking a broad challenge, but then taking it to the user, to those who you want to solve a problem for, and really narrow it down by asking questions and learning more and observing what they do or what they need, so that you can distill it down into a more specific problem. And so this is at least the way I would do it. When I get a broad problem statement, I always look at, okay, what do I know about the problem? What assumptions do I have? And then also look exactly at the question, putting it in a how might we form. For example, to make it a bit clearer, an example we've recently worked on is how might we improve digital collaboration in an international organization? So really, it's a very broad statement, but then looking at, okay, who do we want to solve this for? It's employees in an international organization. And what's the action actually? It's improve. So what is the status quo and where do we want to go? So really doing a bit of analysis on the challenge you're seeing, the broad challenge, and thereby making decisions. How do you want to narrow it down? I hope that makes sense. Starting broad, getting more specific in the process, and iterate by looking, like having your assumptions and looking at those you want to solve something for, and getting their feedback. If you cannot interview them immediately, you can also look at, like, read interviews or do some research, desk research. But that's usually my approach, how I take a broad statement and narrow it down into a specific problem I can solve.
Yes, I totally agree. And I see Miri also raised her hand.
Yes, I would like to add on that. Like, I really love design thinking, and we also use this in our working place as part of our sprints. We work in sprints in Agile, and this is like definitely something that is a really good chance to learn something that you also actually use in the industry. To add on that, on the like how to find a problem to solve, I would suggest thinking about a goal that is really important to you, and try to find nonprofit organizations in your area that work towards solving that type of goal. Like, there are so many that really need your technical abilities to reach out to their target audience. And actually, this gives you like two things, like both a target audience that you actually can approach and ask them and get feedback from them, but also these nonprofit organizations surely have issues that they need to solve, and you can be there to help them and create an application for them that solves that kind of issue that they're facing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Miri. And I think that's perfectly to our second question. As both of you mentioned, one of the best way to find a problem is to talk to people and interview people to get to know their problems. And so the question is how to actually find people for interviews and how to conduct the interviews to make best use of it.
Yeah, building on Miri's point, having someone in your area, someone you can directly engage with, talking about the problem, I think this is a great because it allows you to go beyond just online conversations. Also, what I usually do first is thinking about really interesting users I want to meet. So that is usually an extreme, like I try to get the extreme perspectives. Going back to my example earlier, like how can we improve, how might we improve online collaboration? I would interview someone who is working and collaborating in a digital way on a daily basis using Miro or other tools like 100 times in an average, but also the other extreme perspective, someone who is heavily struggling with the digital way of working together. So getting those extreme perspectives is often valuable because it gives you good insights for potential solutions. And then the other aspect here is how to interview. So asking the right questions, asking open questions, and coming with an open mind, which is easy said, but super hard to be done. I personally find, because we always come with our assumptions and our hypothesis, and really leaving them at home and really going into an interview session and asking open questions, where, when, who, what, without already suggesting the answer. So be really open in that interview and try to explore that user's perspective. And so maybe the top 3 here is: 1, find the extreme users with extreme user perspectives. 2nd, ask open questions, really explore. And 3, look for stories. So whenever I interview a user, I try to pay attention to those bits that really raise my interest, where I feel, okay, I want to learn more about that. And then I'm really try to go into specifics and get all the detail, and also look for emotions. So when do they speak loud and with a lot of passion, versus when are they just talking about data? Like where are the emotions? Where is the user really super engaged? And really try to get those details, because the details are very important for the solution in the end. If we're too generic, so much is lost. So the big innovation potential, in my experience, is in the details. So 1, find the extreme user perspectives. 2, ask the right question. And 3, look for the stories within that user perspectives and look for the details.
Yes, thank you so much for the tips. And Rini, do you have anything to add on?
Yeah, the moment that you have a prototype, this is a bit of a later stage after you did some initial research, then I would really suggest giving the users to try to play with your program application without giving them any explanation, and see where they struggle, or do they succeed in what they're actually supposed to do in the app or in your program. And this really gives you insights about the UX design of your app. It's kind of a thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, true. I think we have a question about this in the prototyping stage, but thanks for pointing it out. And next question. So do you have any tools recommendation that can be used for brainstorming, organization, and collaboration?
Oh yeah, I have a bunch. So first and foremost, Miro for brainstorming and planning. It's like a board where you can throw your thoughts, notes, photos, and collab with more people all together at the same time. Similar to how Google Docs works, sort of, but I don't know, it works in terms of collaboration. The next 2 are for project management, which are Trello and Notion, where you can kind of use a Kanban approach in these 2, and that really helps with organizing tasks between teammates. Git and GitHub, super important for code. This is for writing code in collaboration and version management. And especially it's important to learn because this is a widely used tool in the industry. I could also suggest Heroku for free server for 1 gigabyte RAM and for a free database, which is rather small, but still it's free and super helpful for projects such as yours. And last but not least, Draw.io app diagrams just to create your architecture in high level and your class diagrams and stuff like that. I will write that down in chat. I prepared myself a list and I'll drop it there.
That's great. I also see Maria also put some of the names here. Thanks. Great. Do you have anything to add from your side, Leona?
Yeah, so I have a bit of a like a controversial perspective here. So I'm very much like, okay, the tool needs to work for you, not you for the tool. If you spend lots of time inputting your stuff into some project management interface, I think it can quickly get too much. So I'm really just using a good whiteboard. That could be Miro. Miro is my favorite as well. And then some spreadsheet that is like Google Spreadsheets or another solution that can be used online. And the rest really, I mean, on the coding side, I'm not that of a pro, but for program management tools, my experience is that it's often too complex. So go sometimes less is more, and make sure that you're not wasting your time with too many tools. And I think the most important tool, so to speak, is your brain and your team's brain. So really pay attention to building a team, get to that level of trust where you share your ideas openly, where you're building on each other's ideas rather than competing against who's pushing their ideas through. Build that trust, invest time into becoming a team. And then last but not least, brainstorming techniques. There are a couple of really cool techniques and happy to share my favorite ones if we have time here, not sure. Jan, what do you think? Do we have time for that? Or maybe not. I mean, just be aware there's more than just standing in a row and everyone shouts their ideas. There is, usually I would start with silent brainstorming and then have something like hot potato brainstorming where we're standing in a row and it's really interactive, throwing ideas at each other with a ball. You can also do that in a virtual environment. And then reverse, like how can we make it worse than it is today? And that sometimes really shows you the levers for the challenge. So, okay, what if we want to do it worse, what do we do? And then you can revert that. So they're cool ideas. You can also obviously find that online and get some inspiration. But really pay attention to how do we brainstorm together as a team.
Yeah, I think the team building and how to build the trust between teams. So that's a really important point in collaboration. And now let's come to the next stage, the prototyping stage. So when you have already a problem defined and maybe some ideas in mind. So the question is, how to find people who will actually use our project.
Shall I take this one first? Or?
Please.
Yeah, so on stakeholders, so is it just for the user? I think this is similar to what we said for the first question, like try to find extreme perspectives and get them to play with your prototype and really pay attention, ideally record, like film that or take a recording of it so that you can really see how they're engaging with the prototype. But here the question also is a bit wider. So to stakeholders, also that's the way I would understand it also, who are the best stakeholders or the best users. So it's also a matter of prioritization in my mind. So maybe, again, you could go broad here and think about everyone who the project or your solution could be useful for, and then prioritize them by like how big is their interest, high, low, and how difficult is it to reach them, for example, and then you build a bit of a 2x2 matrix to do a prioritization there. Wondering anything else? I mean, I really like Miri's idea from the start, reaching out to local NGOs that are already existing and that are looking for help, and they would probably be a great resource also for testing and for users.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. And then for the next,
I would like to add on that it's very important to first have your target audience in mind before you're working on the project. That's because like you need to know their struggles and you need like to put yourself in their shoes. So you first really have to know who you're creating a project for, and only then like think about the actual solution and about the actual product. So yeah, finding people who struggle, who you can interview, this should definitely go first. And as like a more practical way to do this, like don't be shy to go on Facebook groups and that speak like your language or in like your area and stuff like that, and actually ask for feedback from people in those groups, and maybe you guys can like organize a Zoom call or something where you can discuss things further, or even meet if that's a possibility. There are many Facebook groups in all sorts of topics, and definitely one of them will be in the parts that you're working on your project.
True. I think the key is here, don't be afraid to reach out to people. And great. And then the next question is, so once we got the ideas, and the big next step is to build a prototype, to put this idea in reality. So what exactly should be done here to go from ideas to prototype? So Millie, do you want to come?
That's a very broad one. Honestly,
we can combine it with the third question, like how to find the best suitable technology.
Yeah. So from ideas to prototype, like I would say that if you can build even paper prototypes just to get feedback as fast as possible from actual users. And they will most likely tell you what they're lacking. Like if you can even create like mockups on a paper or like in Marvel or something like that, which is also a great tool for creating mockups. Yes, show them the mockups and they will give you feedback, iterate on that. And then I think you can actually start working on your actual code. That's kind of what I would say. Iteration is very important. Yes. So yeah, let's go to find the best suitable technology. Is it in terms of finding like the best platform, like either like web or mobile, that kind of question? Or maybe
yes, that
okay,
like we consider going for a web or iOS or and what technologies is best suitable to use. I mean, it's also depends on the skills of the students, right?
Yes, for sure. It definitely depends on the skills, but also making marketing research what kind of tech exists is very important in your cases. Like if, for example, like you're going to like choose between, I mean, what my general suggestion usually for like if you want to create an application, then either using Flutter or React Native will be like the suitable ones over using actual like Android Studio and using Java. I would prefer that because these are cross-platform and they can work both for iOS and for Android. And specifically Flutter can be counted as a technology for the solution challenge. Then Flutter is a total win in this case. But for specifically like web frontend, I feel like React has the most community, like the largest community online and the most resources out of like Angular and Vue. But it kind of comes down to a bit of a preference in some cases. In terms of like backend, it's like definitely varies. Like you can either use like Node.js for backend web or like Python Flask. Like if you have some data processing and you need your project is like more data oriented, then obviously using like Flask with Python would go much better because then you're like staying in the same programming languages. So you kind of need to like Google and see the pros and cons of each technology and see what fits best for your case. Another versus I would say is like you need to know whether your data is like relational, so which means like all the SQL world, which there you have the Postgres database that I would suggest, or the NoSQL world. It depends if like most of your data is like JSON structured, I guess, then MongoDB would be suggested in this case. This is like the most common this versus that I'm familiar with. About using the platform, like either web or mobile, it like in today's world, you really need to like your solution will most likely need both, because like you usually have like a user side and a manager side for an application or like a program. So the manager side will usually be web-based, where you actually on a computer with like a big monitor where you can put lots of settings and options for the manager, and usually the user can be like more on the go. It again depends on the solution, but if the user is more on the go, then obviously you will use mobile for them. So it kind of depends. Yeah.
Great, thanks for your tips. And I think the next question is somehow related to the technologies. So for the architecture design, and do you have anything to add on this question?
Yeah, you do need to know what are the components that you have in your solution. And then you just need to play around with your like backend components and like, yeah, use like Draw.io or Diagrams app and put them in these like small boxes and just play around with the backend stuff and the front end stuff till things that make sense. And please also like consult with your teammates, because having more than one perspective on these things is like very important.
Great, thank you. And I think we still have 6 questions to go. Maybe we need to speed up a little bit since we still have SimplAR team afterwards. So now we have an initial prototype. Are there the best way to test it? I mean, you also mentioned before that reach out to local communities, NGOs. And do you have anything here to add on this question?
I think we can skip if we.
Yeah, maybe a quick one. So I usually use the same, use is not the right word, but I approach the same user I interviewed for the initial problem to learn more and understand their challenges. The same user I would go back to with my initial solution for consistency. So the same user group, just and then seeing if that solves the initial challenge.
Mm-hmm. Great. I think that's really important. And
sorry, one more. Testing hurts. It's really painful. If you have your solution and you're super happy and super convinced that this will be a big win for everyone, and then you hear, nah, not sure how this works and it doesn't really help, sorry. It's super painful, but the more important it is to do it early before you invest so much time into building something. Really go with this scribbling on paper and get that feedback so that you can improve it before you invested weeks of work. So test early and be prepared that it hurts, but then take that and make it better.
Yeah, don't fall in love with your ideas, as painful as it is, because by the end of it, you want to make something that users will use.
Yes, I totally agree. Start early. And I think this also the next question is also quite related. So how to collect and include feedback to the product?
I am very data oriented, so I kind of think that you shouldn't really, I mean, sure, creating a questionnaire is very helpful, but also making sure that your code actually knows how to collect where the user clicks, and then how much time or how many clicks it took for the users to get to where you want them to get. And if you can spread your application or across users and having all of that stored in your database, and that you can have Heroku, like I said, you can create a database and then send everything to that database. I mean, yeah, you will need to do some networking stuff, but I think it's worth it. It's worth the effort. And then you can just use a visualization tool such as Data Studio for Google, and get some insights from how users do these stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, adding to that, when there's not enough time for quantitative data, I think qualitative research is also fine. So getting some users and make sure you're collecting their feedback word by word and really seeing not just the words, but also seeing where do they click, where are they being stuck. And the qualitative also works, especially if you need to go fast. And usually what we do, we first test it on a qualitative base, and then based on that, we develop a survey, which we roll out afterwards, for the quantitative data. Not sure if there's room for this process in this challenge. And the same principles apply as for the initial interviewing when you identifying and narrowing down the challenge you want, the solution phase. Really don't be open and ask open questions. Don't go into the testing and the feedback session with trying to just validate your hypothesis that you had before, but be really open for that feedback and see where they're being stuck.
Thanks for sharing. And so the last question for the prototyping stage is where to find help. So if you are stuck with a problem regarding a Google service, for example, the document doesn't help that well, how should we look for help in this case?
Okay, so first of all, you have your Gdse communities on campus, and the core team can definitely help you out. If that kind of isn't enough, so there are Gdse communities as well of people who already are in the industry, and I'm gonna hint that there's a list of GDEs that is free and public for everyone to see, and you can kind of try to approach them on LinkedIn and try to seek for help in that way, or see what kind of workshops they're hosting in the near future, and that might be relevant to the technology that you're having trouble with, maybe. But yeah, don't be afraid to reach out to people on social media. The worst case, they don't answer you because they don't have time or whatever. But yeah, don't be shy. That's kind of what I would say.
Adding to that, I think before approaching, I think it's a great idea to just connect, but do your homework. So be sure that you have thoroughly reviewed the documentation, because there's a lot of great documentation out there. The Google teams invest a lot of time into building help center content and also supporting the forums where users exchange. So use that first, and if you can't get what you need, then it's great to reach out to those contacts on the list.
Yeah, maybe approaching straight away before you did your homework. You need to be more 100% sure that you tried everything that you could before that, because surely I've seen Google's documentation and it's really great.
Thanks. So now let's come to the last stage of the solution challenge. So that's probably 1 or 2 weeks before the submission deadline. So the question is how complete should the prototype be for the submission? Is a minimum viable product sufficient, or so what's the level of completeness here? So who wants to go first?
Well, I would honestly say that no matter what your stage is, if you have something, then please submit it, because it will be much better to submit something than nothing at all. But also an MVP that you need to decide on your MVP, most a valuable product, and make sure it works. You need to choose your key features, your must-have, nice to have, and the must-have, the most critical must-haves should be there. And it's okay if they're buggy, it's fine. And even if you have some parts that on your backend that are not really completely working, but we can get the idea from the demo, and then it's definitely fine.
I think being really clear on who's the user, what's the opportunity, that also helps. So when you have a very clear value add and very clear strategy and a very clear plan how to get there, that can help even if your prototype is quite buggy and isn't ready yet, fully ready. So yeah, so both is important. I think having that clear focus strategy and plan in place and explaining that to the jury, but also obviously having something to prove that that you know how to do it.
Yeah, sounds good. So we need to then prioritize and keep focus on the key features that our solution want to present. And now the last questions, but also a really important question is the demo video, as this is part of the submission. So do you have any suggestions, like what should be included in the demo video?
You want to go first, Miri? So I have to admit, I'm not sure with the guidelines. I'm sure there are pretty detailed guidelines also about the format of the video and what to include there. But coming from a marketing perspective and from a storytelling point of view, I think it's important to think about how do I want the person watching this video to feel when the video is over, and building that emotional connection. And it sounds maybe a bit crazy marketing stuff, but it is really important that that the viewer can connect to your user, to your target group, and understands the challenge, and also understands how are you coming to solve this and how are you contributing. So there is a big emotional element to this. And I think we will see a great example by the SimplAR, where there's also a surprising element, which is super cool to have. Like in the classic storytelling flow is always you have a hero, and this is a universal principle of how to tell stories, marketing or whichever context it may be, but having a hero, and that could be your user, and then seeing the challenge of this user and having a surprising element. And that surprising element could be your solution, or it could be first you have a solution and then it's something else, but some way of catching the attention. And then you have the change in the end. Okay, what's different when your solution kicks in? So these elements really make a very good short story, like a short video. And think about the emotional part of it, not just coming with lots of data and figures, and no, really also think, okay, why does this matter? And how can the person watching this video relate to the challenge and the hero?
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks for the tips. And do you have anything to add, Millie? Okay, yeah, thank you so much. And let me check if there's any questions in the chat. Seems not to be, but so feel free to ask to write your questions in chat if you have. And also thank you so much for your advice, Leona and Millie. And now I'm also super excited to welcome the SimplAR team from TU Munich, who is also the top 10 finalist of the Solution Challenge last year. So glad to have you here and hear about your experience. And so do you want to do a quick round of introduction of yourself? Maria?
Yep, thanks a lot for inviting us. So basically we are Viviana, Zami, Almo, and myself. But today only Almo and me will be presenting our presentation because Viviana and Zami sadly don't have time. But yeah, we are all students of the Technical University of Munich, computer science and physics. So yeah, I think maybe we could start with the presentation. And first of all, what is SimplAR? What does our app do? So basically, SimplAR is an AR app for functionally illiterate people that can translate text of any form into plain language. So instead of me explaining further what we did, we can maybe watch the video.
The concept of function.
Should I start now?
Yeah, you could start now. Yeah, I can hear the sound. I hope everyone as well.
UNESCO definitions which cover a continuum of proficiency levels rather than a dichotomy. You didn't understand the meaning of the sentence? Functional illiteracy, the inability to understand text on more than a basic level, is the reality for 1 in 7 people worldwide. Among others, one common cause is intellectual disabilities. In a world where we communicate mainly through text, people with functional illiteracy are excluded in many ways. UN Goal 10.3 specifically states to empower and promote inclusion of all, including people with disabilities. When talking to experts, we learned that there are simplified language frameworks that help with functional illiteracy. However, these texts are translated by hand, so only very few texts are made accessible.
This is where SimplAR comes in. We're using the power of natural language processing to automatically translate any text for functional illiterate people. When first opening the app, the user is introduced into the W3C verified disability-friendly UI. In our Flutter app, the user can scan any text. Firebase ML extracts the text and sends it to our backend hosted by Google Cloud. The backend uses a mix of GPT-3 and our own machine learning models to process the text into a simpler version. The simplified text is returned to the client, which then shows it as an AR overlay. Some texts are so complicated that an AR overlay would be unreadable. In this case, we open a new screen with the plain language text and supporting images, as recommended by the Plain Language Framework. Using SimplAR, functional literate people can understand any text in any medium independently, and we can have a more inclusive world.
So yeah, that was our project, and let me then quickly recap what's actually how actually the architecture looks like and how we divided work in our team. So basically, we have the front end and the back end, and since we are 4 people, we divided ourselves into two people for the front end and 2 for the back end, so that we can parallelize our work and work much faster, which worked really good for us. So our front end is basically a Flutter app with which you can take pictures. With which you can take pictures, and the ML kit, which is integrated into Flutter, extracts the text from these pictures. Afterwards, the text is sent over to our backend, which is hosted on a server in the Google Cloud. And Google Cloud contains our machine learning pipeline, which consists of the pre-processing step and the post-processing step, with the main step being the OpenAI, basically the GPT-3 engine that translates our text into the simplified text. Afterwards, the easy text is sent over to the front end, where it is shown as an AR overlay. So yeah, that's basically it. And let me also tell you about how we actually found this idea. So first of all, we started with a really deep brainstorming session. So one evening, we just sat down and each of us used a silent brainstorming technique to come up with some ideas to different UN goals. You can see, for example, at the bottom right of the slide, our Miro board, where we tried to summarize some of the ideas that we had. And after we had those ideas, we selected some of them that we really liked the most, and also tried to contact German organizations to figure out figure out further problems for specific problems, so that also we can talk about the problems that people actually have in their world. And like that, we talked to the disabled people, and there we found out about functional literacy. And as soon as we established this functional literacy idea, we started talking to experts. So that means that we contacted German organizations which were working with functional literate people. And as soon as we had the interviews with them, we found out that they had the problem that they don't have enough staff to translate the text of a complicated form into the simple form. And this is how our idea had arisen. So that means that we just created the app with which you can translate text of any form into simple language.
So now that you know about our journey, we can maybe show also the tools that we've used. So we've also previously had like some mentions about the tools, and like the first tool, especially Miro, was also very helpful for us for generating all the ideas, visualizing all the ideas, and just getting an overview about all our thoughts. And similarly to Miro, there also exists like from Google a Google Jamboard, where you can also create some post-its on a whiteboard. But in my opinion, I would recommend Miro because it has more features, and you can also use it for free, especially as a student. You can get like a student account, so I would rather go with Miro. Also, you can use Google Drive and Google Slides to organize all your files and all your slides, but also for managing all the tasks that are to be done. I can also recommend you to use the Trello board, because then you also have an overview about all the open tasks. For designing, we use Figma, and this is especially useful if you want to try out an early version of your prototype, as mentioned before from the experts. Like you do want to talk with your users before you invest too heavily in them. So Figma is a really good tool to create like a really nice, professionally looking MVP before investing too much time into programming them. Also for communication, we use Google Meet, Zoom, or Discord. And this is also especially useful if you want to talk to other users or other experts, especially during the Corona time, where you can talk to them directly. If you can talk to them directly, I can recommend it, but also use those tools to talk with them over the internet. Also very important, if you code something, manage your code in the public repo, and then you can share also the code with the judges. I don't know if this is necessary, but I think it also helps. So what have we learned, and what can you learn from us? What I think is really important is that a good brainstorming sessions is really necessary. And including to that, it's really important to gather a lot of input from experts, because there is like a lot of unsolved problems that we usually don't see, because like we are in our own bubble. But if we think about some problems, I can really recommend to go to the experts, because sometimes the problems that we think aren't really problems, and there are other problems that are maybe related to them. So go out, talk to the experts, interview the stakeholders, like the experts and the users, and gather the data from them. In the end, we also have some tips and advices. And most importantly is like ask for feedback and improve your idea over and over again. So talk to the experts before really finalizing your idea. And when you have your idea, be very specific with it and make sure that the product is actually needed. For that, you can just interview your users and verify that it's really a good and important problem. But most importantly, the competition is not only about winning prizes. It's really also about gaining new experiences and trying out new technologies. So most importantly, our most important tip and advice is just have fun.
I have a question.
Sure.
Did you have to pay something for using the GCP services or OpenAI GPT?
We still had some free tokens over from another hackathon, but I'm not sure how it currently is. I think sometimes there are some free tokens also if you sign up, but I think you have to look into that.
Great. Thank you so much, SimplAR team. I see there's some questions in the chat. Or are they already answered? In GCP.
One asked like, how did you use AI GCP? That's not answered so far.
So for GPT-3, it is really important to find a prompt. So how GPT works is not like the other machine learning models usually work. So basically you have like a question to the model, you design a prompt. Well, that means that you just design some kind of a sentence where you say, please translate, for example, this text into plain language. Of course, you can do better than that, but like a prompt usually looks like this, and then you submit it to GPT-3 with the text, and GPT-3 usually then returns what you want. But you need to be more specific than that usually, so that means that you need to provide some examples how a difficult text will be translated into a simple text, and GPT-3 will pick that up and will learn from your prompt and from your examples, and then provide you with a translation of the simple text. And since this is a really difficult technology, what we basically did is that we had this pre-processing and post-processing step, where we firstly shortened the text in the pre-processing step, like just extracted the main information from that, then pass it over to GPT-3, and GPT-3 translated that into plain language, and then we post-processed it again with shortening, and then we pass it over to the front end.
Great. Any other questions for SimplAR team or for our solution challenge mentors? Also, feel free to unmute yourself if you want to ask your question directly. And when you're writing your questions, I'll also have an update. So, I think also someone from you asked what is Flutter. We have in Flutter Festival event coming in 2 weeks. And it's about intro to full stack Dart, and Dart is a language used for Flutter. And there you will meet Viviana and Kilian, and they will give you a hands-on workshop about Dart and Flutter. So please feel free to check it out on our website and register for the event if you are interested. And we also prepared some useful resources for solution challenge, like the kickoff event recording from the Google Global team, and also some other resources, like they are also offering free domains for students participate in solution challenge, and also some learning resources for many of the technologies that are helpful. And we will share the slides with you, so you will have all the links of this on this slide. Great. So are there still any questions you want? Feel free to ask. And also, let me also stop the live streaming.